All right, we'll be talking about endocrine, and this little lecture is about the anatomy and physiology of the endocrine system and pediatric differences. So the endocrine system is made up of lots of different glands, tissues, clumps of cells, and all of those produce and secrete chemicals, and those are hormones. Um, Hormones, their job is to stimulate and regulate all of the actions of other tissues, organs, or other endocrine glands. So whatever a hormone is stimulating is considered the target tissue. Um, there's two types of hormones. There's peptides and there are steroids. So within the peptide hormones, there's proteins, glycoproteins, modified amino acids. Um, Most hormones need some sort of a carrier to get inside of a cell. So peptides are protein hormones like insulin that helps to open the wall of the cell to allow glucose transport to get inside, right? Um, Steroids are like lipids and they can diffuse on their own into a cell. They don't need anybody to help them. Estrogen is a steroid hormone, so we can take birth control pills with water. Yeah, and then we're done, right? Some of the organs or tissues that are in the endocrine system are the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland, the adrenal glands, the gonads, which include the testes and the ovaries, and the islet of Langerhans in the pancreas. Here's a lovely picture of all of the different organs and tissues that are involved in the endocrine system. Um, we have the posterior pituitary, which deals with antidiuretic hormone and oxytocin. The anterior pituitary deals with thyroid stimulating hormone and something hormone, ACTH, um, adrenocorticotropic hormone. Um, it also does, the anterior pituitary does growth hormone, and it does FSH, LH, and prolactin. So your follicle stimulating hormone, your luteinizing hormones, all of those come from the anterior pituitary. Your thyroid spits out T4 and T3 and calcitonin, which helps to lower blood calcium. Our parathyroid, it spits out parathyroid hormone. Adrenal cortex deals with glucocorticoids and manages our cortisol levels. Mineralocorticoids like aldosterone and sex hormones. Our adrenal medulla does epinephrine and norepinephrine. The pancreas does insulin and glucagon. Okay, so almost all the problems that develop in the endocrine system occur when there's either a deficiency or an excess. So they're always related to too much or too little of a specific hormone. In kids, conditions that are endocrine conditions, they develop like kind of without being seen. Your textbook says insidiously. So they're creeping around in the background of the child's body, happening because there's an insufficient production of some hormones somewhere. And then if the problem isn't diagnosed and treated early, then there's issues. Um, the difference in peds to adults is that hormone control of almost every body function, it's not fully developed until 12 to 18 months. All right, these are some of the problems that pediatrics or that any child develops related to an endocrine deficiency or excess where we're not noticing it happening and we're not diagnosing and treating it early. These kids are going to suffer from delayed growth, delayed development, cognitive impairments, and potentially death. So with the pediatric differences, we're going to see because the endocrine system isn't fully functional until they're 12 to 18 months. And you know that the endocrine system, because of the hormones and the organs that we talked about, um, they contribute a lot to the concentration of our fluids, our electrolytes, our amino acids, our glucose, and different trace substances. Because little ones are not doing that fully, it's so much easier to have imbalances that lead to issues. So now we're going to talk about the fact that it's basically the neuroendocrine system. We call it the endocrine system, but the endocrine system and the nervous system are so intertwined that really it should be the neuroendocrine system. So within the neuroendocrine system, we see that there's endocrine control. Um, the endocrine glands are controlled by neural centers in the brain. So within the brain, signals and messages are sent out, and they control the endocrine glands. The hypothalamus is what we would consider to be the main neural control center. So they call it the master switchboard. I would call it the motherboard. Um, then hanging from the hypothalamus is your pituitary gland. The hypothalamus sends messages to the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland releases hormones that regulate body functions, and that's how we get our stuff done. I'm sure you guys have all heard of feedback loops. We have negative feedback loops and positive feedback loops. A negative feedback loop is one that is trying to maintain homeostasis. It is where the original stimulus causes an effect that is negative to the original stimulus. So the effect is negative. It's a flip-flop. So if the original stimulus is something is low, the effect is going to cause that low something to now become high. Just like too much calcium in the blood might be the stimulus, the feedback, however, is negative and ends up in less calcium. Does that make sense? Our positive feedback loops, it's not homeostasis. There is no adjustment. It is literally just the stimulus promoting and increasing until the desired effect occurs, like childbirth. And this slide is the basic physical examination findings that you might see related to endocrine or neuroendocrine issues. So height and weight are going to be either low or very high. And these are usually related to pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, or diabetic issues. Um, we see lots of hair issues, so coarse, brittle, or excessive hair happens in hypothyroidism, and there can be an abnormal distribution of hair with adrenal problems. When we look at the children's faces, we can see Cushingoid appearance with rounded face with hair growth in places where it really shouldn't be. And then Hypoparathyroidism tends to lead to features that are abnormal or deformed. The eyes, there's going to be blurry vision, changes in vision, just like with diabetes. We might see with disorders like hypocalcemia or hypopituitarism that their teeth grow in really late. And then ketoacidosis can cause really fruity breath. Hyperparathyroidism causes goiters, and that's a big swelling in the neck. We're going to see different skin changes related to disorders like pituitary disorders, Cushingoid syndromes, or hypothyroidism. And then hyperthyroidism and thyroid disorders overall are going to cause like tachycardia, palpitations, sweating. Ketoacidosis, we're going to see deep, labored breathing like we do in Kussmaul's. And then Cushing syndromes cause hypertension. There's going to be issues in bowel habits, even related to diabetes, SIADH, and diabetes insipidus. And then shaky hands can be related to parathyroid disorders. And then we're also going to see things like excessive growth, early growth, and or delayed growth relating to the genital area and different thyroid or adrenal problems. This whole thing is found on page 1775 in your textbook. And this, I believe, is chapter 48.